In this episode, we cross the Canadian border and visit a UNESCO World Heritage Site on Jane and Steve's Golden Anniversary Adventure. In 2020, we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. To commemorate this, we decided that we would travel to all 50 United States in our 2018 Freedom Elite Class C motorhome. Well, 49 states anyway, as we took a plane to Hawaii. Well, we completed our journey in 2022 when we drove from Florida to Alaska. You would think we had had enough travels. Wrong. In 2024, we set out to do it again. Join us as we embark on another journey to the last frontier. Join us for Alaska 2.0. After our stopover in Great Falls, where we visited the Great Falls at Ryan's Dam and the wonderful Air Parking Museum at Malmstrom Air Force Base, we break camp at the Great Falls RV Park. Stop off and gas up for the 182-mile drive to Coaldale, Alberta, Canada. Our uncle and Aunt Walter and Patricia live there, and we have planned a short visit. The trip is somewhat uneventful as we drive through the vast prairie and grasslands of northern Montana, past the farming communities of Vaughan, Power, Dutton, Brady, and Shelby. Alberta is a starting off point through Canada to travel to Alaska. Over the next 10 days, we will traverse Alberta, British Columbia, and the Yukon Territory before we cross the border into the last frontier, Alaska. About one-third of Alberta's land area is in agricultural use, with roughly half that agricultural land used to grow crops and the remainder to raise livestock. After driving 2.5 hours, we arrive at the Canada Customs Port of Entry at Sweetgrass and find a line of about 10 cars and campers waiting to cross the border. Some 45 minutes later, it's our turn to answer the customary questions and then cross over into Canada. Eggs, poultry, firearms, drugs, and marijuana are essentially forbidden. You can bring a rifle or shotgun if you have secured the necessary long gun Canadian registration permit prior to crossing. Under no circumstances can you bring a handgun into Canada. About one-third of Alberta's land area is in agricultural use, with roughly half that agricultural land used to grow crops and the remainder to raise livestock. A few kilometers north, we stop off at the Milk River Visitor Welcome Center. Here they have a lovely air-conditioned welcome center with washrooms. That's what they call restrooms in Canada, and a museum focusing on the dinosaur fossils discovered nearby, as well as points of interest throughout Alberta. We stopped here during our 2022 Alaska journey, but due to COVID restrictions at that time, the building was closed. There is a free sanitation, that's what they call dump stations in Canada, and a fresh water fill. Another 65 miles and an hour and a half, we arrive in Coaldale. It's been a nearly 5-hour day for the mapped 2-hour and 47-minute trip. It is here that we get to reunite with several members of our Canadian family, Uncle Walter and Aunt Patricia, cousins Cheryl and her husband Kevin, Debbie and her husband Mike, James and his wife Brenda. We enjoyed 3 days visiting with them, including a trip to the head smashed in Buffalo Jump with Walter and Patricia. Head smashed in Buffalo Jump is 18 kilometers, yes, kilometers as Canada uses the metric system as measurement, west of Fort Macleod, Alberta. The site is an area where the foothills of the Rocky Mountains begin to rise from the prairie. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and home of a museum of the Blackfoot culture. The First Nations Blackfoot were nomadic bison hunters who ranged across large areas of the semi-arid shortgrass prairie region of the Great Plains of western North America. They followed the bison herds as they migrated between what is now the United States and Canada. We had visited this site some 50 years ago when it had absolutely no structures or facilities on it. Today, it hosts a modern visitor center and museum with marked hiking trails and signage denoting the keynotes of this historical site. The Buffalo Jump was used for 5,500 years by the indigenous peoples of the plains to kill bison by driving them off the 11 meters or 36-foot high cliff. Before the late introduction of horses, the Blackfoot drove the bison from a grazing area in the Porcupine Hills, about 3 kilometers west of this site, to the drive lanes lined by hundreds of buffalo runners camouflaged as carns by dressing up as coyotes and wolves. These specialized buffalo runners were young men trained in animal behavior to guide the bison into the drive lanes. Then, at full gallop, the bison would fall from the cliff from the weight of the herd pressing behind them, breaking their legs and rendering them immobile. The cliff itself is about 300 meters long and at its highest point drops 10 meters. Well, that's 980 feet long and 33 foot high into the valley below. The site was in use at least 6,000 years ago, and the bone deposits are 12 meters or 39 feet deep. After falling off the cliff, the injured bison were finished off by other Blackfoot warriors at the cliff base, armed with spears and clubs.
Please hit that subscribe button so that you'll be notified as our future episodes are released and help us build our channel. And please tell your friends about us and invite them to join us for our future episodes.
The carcasses were then processed at a nearby camp. The camp at the foot of the cliffs provided the people with everything they needed to process a bison carcass, including fresh water. The bison carcass was used for a variety of purposes, from tools made from the bone to the hide used to make dwellings and clothing. The importance of the site goes beyond just providing food and supplies. After a successful hunt, the wealth of food allowed the people to enjoy leisure time and pursue artistic and spiritual interests. This increased the cultural complexity of their society. It is an interesting, well-produced, and very educational visitor center and museum. Quite an amazing change for this Buffalo Jump that we visited back in 1975. In our next episode, we travel further west and north to once again visit the farming community with a name made famous by science fiction writer Gene Roddenberry, Vulcan. As we continue on Jane and Steve's Golden Anniversary Adventure, The Road to Alaska 2.0.